A black bus mechanic stood in the rain holding a set of emergency keys when a white police officer pointed his flashlight at his chest and shouted, "Drop those keys before I put you on the ground." Marcus froze beside the yellow school bus as thunder cracked over the small town of Cedar Lake, Georgia. Behind him, floodwater was already crawling across the parking lot, swallowing the painted lines. The town's river had broken through the old wall an hour ago, and people were trapped on the east side. Marcus had been called by the school district himself because half the buses would not start, and he was the only mechanic still close enough to help. But Officer Dale did not ask for his name. He did not ask why he was there. He only saw a black man near school buses at night and decided the story for everyone. "I work here," Marcus said calmly. "Those buses need to move now. The nursing home is 3 blocks from the river." Dale stepped closer. "You expect me to believe the district gave you keys to every bus?" Marcus lifted his work badge, but rain covered the plastic. Dale snatched it from his hand, looked at it for half a second, and threw it into a puddle. "Fake badges are easy," he said. Marcus felt something cold move through him, colder than the rain. In the distance, a siren wailed, then stopped suddenly. The power went out across the street. The whole town turned black except for the flashing lights from Dale's patrol car. A woman's voice came over the police radio. "All available units, Cedar Lake Senior Home needs evacuation. Water entering first floor. We have residents in wheelchairs." Marcus looked at Dale. "That is what I'm trying to tell you." Dale grabbed Marcus by the arm and pushed him against the bus. "You are not driving anywhere." At that moment, the school principal, Mrs. Keller, ran into the parking lot under a red umbrella. She was shaking, soaked, and breathing hard. "Officer, stop. That is Marcus Reed. He has worked on these buses for 12 years. Dale looked annoyed, not embarrassed. "Ma'am, I found him sneaking around with keys." "He is not sneaking," she snapped. "I called him." Marcus picked his badge out of the puddle and wiped mud from the corner. He did not look angry. That made Dale even more uncomfortable. Mrs. Keller pointed to the buses. 4 of them will not start. Marcus is the only person who knows which ones can handle flooded roads. We have less than 20 minutes. Dale released Marcus slowly, but his face stayed hard. "Fine, but I'm watching him." Marcus did not answer. He climbed into the first bus, turned the key, listened to the engine, then stepped out. "Not this one. Air intake sits too low." He moved to the second bus. The engine coughed and died. Dale muttered, "Convenient." Marcus ignored him and ran to the third bus. This one roared, alive. He smiled for the first time. This one can make it. Within minutes, Marcus had 3 buses running. Teachers and volunteers arrived, confused and scared. Some looked at Dale, then at Marcus, sensing something had happened but not knowing what. Marcus stood in the rain and gave clear orders. "No one drives through Main Street. Use Mill Road. Then cut behind the church. Keep steady. Do not stop in deep water." Dale laughed under his breath. Now he's giving commands. Marcus turned to him. "Tonight is not about your pride. It's about people breathing tomorrow." The words hit harder than thunder. They reached the senior home just as water rushed through the front doors. Elderly residents were crying in the lobby. Nurses were pushing wheelchairs through ankle-deep water. One old man kept asking for his wife. Another woman held a photo album to her chest like it was a child. Marcus jumped from the bus and began lifting people carefully, one by one. He carried a woman named Miss Eleanor through the water while she whispered, "Please don't drop me." Marcus smiled gently. "Never." Dale watched from the doorway. For the first time that night, he had nothing to say. Then a nurse screamed, "Room 112. Mr. Harris is still inside." The hallway was already flooding. Dale looked at the water and hesitated. Marcus did not. He grabbed a flashlight and ran in. The hallway smelled like wet carpet and fear. Water pushed against his legs as he kicked open room 112. Mr. Harris was trapped in bed, oxygen tube tangled around the rail. Marcus lifted him with both arms, but the water surged harder. The flashlight slipped and vanished. In the dark, Marcus heard Dale behind him. "Reed," Dale shouted. "This way." Together, they carried Mr. Harris out, stumbling through the black hallway as water slapped against the walls. When they reached the lobby, everyone clapped and cried at once. Dale looked at Marcus, breathing heavily. "You saved him," Marcus said. "We saved him." That answer broke something inside Dale more than anger ever could. By sunrise, all 43 residents were safe inside the high school gym. News cameras arrived, parents arrived, town officials arrived. Everyone wanted to know how the evacuation happened so fast. Mrs. Keller stepped in front of the cameras and said, "Marcus Reed saved this town tonight. He repaired the buses, planned the safe route, and carried residents out of danger." The reporter turned to Marcus. "How does it feel to be called a hero?" Marcus glanced at Dale, who stood quietly near the wall. Everyone followed his eyes. Marcus said, "A hero is someone people choose to trust before it is too late." The gym went silent. Dale walked forward slowly. His face looked smaller now, like the night had washed something from it. He stopped in front of Marcus. I judged you before I knew you, Dale said, his voice low. I was wrong. Marcus looked at him for a long moment. Wrong is easy. Changing is harder. Dale nodded. Then I will start there. Miss Eleanor, wrapped in a blanket, raised her hand from the front row. Officer, next time a man is holding keys in a storm, maybe ask what door he's trying to open. People laughed softly, then clapped. Marcus looked around the gym at the elderly residents, teachers, nurses, and families. He did not feel victory. He felt tired. He felt grateful they were alive. And he felt the heavy truth that some people had to save the world before they were allowed to be seen as human. Later that morning, as the rain finally stopped, a little boy walked up to Marcus with a cup of hot coffee. My grandma said you carried her, the boy said. Marcus took the cup. She was brave. The boy looked at the buses outside. Can I be a mechanic like you? Marcus smiled. You can be anything, but whatever you become, make sure you never let anyone's judgment decide your worth. Outside, the floodwater reflected the sunrise like broken glass. The town had lost roads, cars, and homes, but inside that gym, something else had been exposed to. A badge could give power, a uniform could give authority, but character was proven when no one had time to pretend. And that morning, everyone in Cedar Lake knew the man they almost stopped was the reason they were still alive. Marcus thought the night was finally over, but the hardest part had not even begun. By afternoon, rescue helicopters circled above Cedar Lake while volunteers unloaded blankets, bottled water, and medical supplies into the high school gym. Families hugged each other through tears, children slept on folded jackets, and elderly residents rested on temporary beds lined across the basketball court. Marcus quietly slipped outside. He had never liked attention. While everyone inside celebrated him, he walked toward the flooded bus depot to check on the vehicles. Mud covered the parking lot, broken tree branches were scattered everywhere, and several buses had been damaged by floating debris. He climbed under one bus with a toolbox and started tightening a loose brake line. A television reporter spotted him and hurried over. Marcus, the whole town is looking for you. The mayor wants to recognize you at the emergency press conference. Marcus wiped the grease from his hands. These buses will carry kids back to school next week, he replied. That matters more than cameras. The reporter stared at him for a second before lowering her microphone. She realized she had just found the real story. An hour later, the mayor stood in front of hundreds of residents gathered outside City Hall. Rescue workers, firefighters, teachers, police officers, and volunteers filled the crowd. We often think heroes wear capes, the mayor began. Sometimes they wear muddy boots and carry a toolbox. The audience immediately turned toward Marcus as Mrs. Keller gently guided him to the front. The mayor continued. Last night, this town was only minutes away from tragedy. One man's experience, calm, thinking, and courage saved dozens of lives. The applause lasted nearly a full minute. Marcus looked uncomfortable. He had never wanted to stand on a stage. He had only wanted to fix broken things. Then the mayor surprised everyone. Marcus Reed, on behalf of Cedar Lake, I would like to offer you the position of Director of Emergency Transportation Planning. We need someone who understands both machines and people. The crowd cheered even louder. Marcus smiled politely. I appreciate the honor, he said, but before I accept anything, I want to ask everyone here for one promise. The cheering slowly faded. I don't want people remembering my name because of one flood. I want people remembering this lesson every single day. He paused and looked across the crowd until his eyes met Officer Dale's. Last night I wasn't dangerous because I was holding Bafta's keys. He held up the same muddy key ring that had almost gotten him arrested. I became dangerous only after someone decided my skin color told my whole story. The silence was immediate. You can rebuild roads in weeks. You can rebuild houses in months. But rebuilding trust after unfair judgment can take years. Several people lowered their heads. Officer Dale slowly walked toward the stage. Nobody knew what he was about to do. He removed his police badge from his uniform. I've worn this badge for 14 years, he said into the microphone. Last night I forgot what it was supposed to represent. He turned toward Marcus. I cannot erase what I did, but I can make sure I never repeat it. Then, in front of the entire town, he publicly apologized without excuses. Not because someone forced him, because he finally understood. The crowd remained silent for a few seconds before people began clapping not for the mistake, but for the courage to admit it. After the ceremony ended, children surrounded Marcus asking for pictures. Instead of standing in the center, Marcus invited the firefighters, nurses, bus drivers, mechanics, and volunteers to stand beside him. No one saves a town alone, he told the kids. Real heroes make room for other heroes. That photo would later appear in newspapers across the state. Not because one man stood in front, because everyone stood together. Several weeks passed. The floodwaters disappeared, roads reopened, and students finally returned to school. On the first morning back, every yellow school bus left the depot safely. Marcus stood quietly near the gate watching them drive away. Mrs. Keller walked over carrying a small wooden box. "We wanted you to have this." Inside was the muddy bus key that Officer Dale had thrown into the puddle that stormy night. The school maintenance team had cleaned it, polished it, and mounted it inside a glass frame. Below it was a simple engraved message, the key that opened more than buses. Marcus stared at the frame for a long moment. It was not expensive. It was not made of gold, yet it meant more than any trophy he had ever seen. As he prepared to leave, he noticed a new student standing alone near the entrance. The boy looked nervous. "I'm new here," the teenager whispered. "People keep staring at me." Marcus smiled kindly. "Do you know what the strongest engine I've ever repaired had in common with every broken one?" The boy shook his head. "You couldn't judge it by the outside." The student smiled. Marcus handed him the framed key for just a second. "Remember this." The boy carefully held it. "People will always make quick judgments, but your character gets the final word." The student nodded, his confidence returning. Marcus took the frame back and watched the buses disappear down the road under a bright blue sky. The storm had ended, the flood had passed, but the greatest change was not in the streets of Cedar Lake. It was in the hearts of the people who finally learned that respect should never arrive after proof, courage should never need permission, and humanity should never depend on the color of someone's skin. Because sometimes the most important thing a person carries is not a badge, a title, or a uniform. Sometimes it is simply a set of ordinary keys held by an extraordinary human being.